Good morning, everyone. It's time to go on the record.
Now is not the time to be talking about pay increases on Beacon Hill.
No thanks, says Governor-elect Charlie Baker on more dough, but the public's view?
A panel recommends pay increases for the Bay State's governor and other top state officials. What do you think? Yes or no?
All of this as Beacon Hill chews on a controversy with the presumed Senate President Stanley Rosenberg.
Inequality in communities, lack of opportunities, lack of jobs, lack of education.
More Ferguson aftermath. Mayor Marty Walsh vowing to get to the root problem of inequality and racism in Boston. And
I don't think anybody will stop calling this South Station, quite frankly.
the man who said that, Governor Michael Dukakis, is our guest this morning. Much to discuss with the man who has been a Bay State Democratic superstar for decades.
From WCPB Boston, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ed Harding, along with News Center 5's political reporter Janet Booth. Thank you for joining us this morning. Our guest today is the Democratic political legend, Governor Michael Dukakis. Brookline born, still there, what, 81 years later? Is that the right math?
That's correct.
81 years later. He served 3 terms as governor of the Commonwealth from 83 to 91, and in 1988 was a Democratic nominee for president, losing to eventually George W. Bush. Since 1991, that's George Herbert Walker Bush. Since 1991, distinguished professor of political science at Northeastern University in Boston and visiting professor at the Luskin School of Public Affairs in UCLA. In fact, when are you going to California?
Day after Christmas.
Day after Christmas?
We'll be back in April.
Well, enjoy
It's a
your
terrible
Christmas.
burden, but somebody's got to do it.
You must miss our snowstorms here, though, don't you?
I miss them, but Kitty does not miss them.
So we've got another Republican moving into the corner office
do.
on Beacon Hill. There's only been one Democratic elected governor since you left in 1990. What does this say about the electorate here in Massachusetts? And give us a preview of how you think Charlie Baker will fare.
This is a very independent electorate. You know, this idea that Massachusetts voters are kind of down-the-line Democrats, no matter who, is just a lot of nonsense. As we know, we're notorious ticket splitters. It's been going on for a long time. And this is just another example of it. Charlie is a relatively moderate guy, philosophically. He's no Tea Party guy. And from time to time, we vote for these kinds of folks.
So what do you think
Relax.
so what do you presume that he's going to do that's sort of in line with what Deval Patrick has been doing?
I think a lot of what he will do is consistent with what Deval has done. I mean, I think he's a guy that's going to continue a lot of this work. The one area where Patrick has really been very good, and where Charlie, I hope, will be good, but hasn't really been that involved, is the whole public infrastructure stuff. I mean, you know, these Republican governors before Deval left us with a wreck of a highway system, and Patrick's spent the last 8 years repairing it. Not only that, but we've got a lot of investing to do in public transportation and in high-speed rail and this kind of stuff. So I hope that Baker will get into this, and as you probably know, Bill Weld and I are teaming up on the project to connect North and South Station by rail, which I hope Charlie will endorse.
You mean North and Michael Dukakis Station. I just want to make sure.
Remember, it's still Boston Garden, no matter how many,
You're right
no matter
about
how
that.
many banks try to buy that place.
You're right about that.
But it was a nice gesture, and it was.
I want to talk about Deval Patrick because 8 years ago, both you and your wife worked very hard for who was a man who was relatively unknown
Right.
at that time. So
I knew him, Ed, because he had been a partner in the law firm that I used to be a partner in. So I knew Deval, but who knew what he would do as governor?
Well, and so assess with the Republican coming in, assess his legacy, and how do you think that his stamp will stay on the
I think he's been a
state?
darn good governor. Remember, he inherited a state that was in very deep trouble. Mostly because of a national recession, which always kills the states, as you know. I mean, you folks have been covering this for years. Every time we have a national recession, bingo, needs go up, revenues go down, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
And he steered us through that period pretty effectively. And we've come out on the other side of it with an economy that's humming, with the best school system in the country, and with a transportation system, which, thanks largely to Deval and his people, is now back where it should have been under those Republican governors. So I think he's done a good job.
Do you think he should run for president? As a man who has done that from that very office.
I'm the last guy to advise anybody on whether to run and how to run. But I think he's got a future in national politics, national service. He and I haven't talked about this. I think he'd make a terrific Supreme Court justice, to tell you the truth. but I don't know that he or the president or anyone else.
Well,
is
he
talking
has
about
not,
this.
doused the rumors that he might be interested, obviously not in 2016, but further down the road.
Who knows?
Do you think that there is too much distance between what he is doing now and running at that point, based on your experience? Or do you think that, you can come back 8 years later?
I think you can be out of office for a while.
And it doesn't make it much of a difference.
Hillary's been out of office, hasn't she? Left the Senate.
But she was in the public eye the entire time.
To be sure. But I don't think that's really an issue, Janet, these days. I mean, people can come back and do lots of good things.
Just very, very briefly, what do you think will be the biggest roadblocks for Hillary Clinton when she runs? Even though it's been a while since you ran.
I think the Republicans will do everything they can to tear her down, and it's already begun. Those comments by Karl Rove about her physical health, I thought were despicable. I mean, despicable.
But what do you think that she's going to have to? I mean, what are the biggest issues that she's going to have to?
I think she's going to have to deal with that. That is this kind of stuff. In terms of who she is, what she's done, her popular appeal. I mean, I think it's all good. But you're going to see an attack. You're going to see an attack campaign that makes the one against me look like child's play. To tell you the truth.
And what about the other side? Who do you expect will be her
I have no idea.
opponent?
I have no idea.
There have been a lot of names out there.
Jeb Bush is one of them.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think we need another Bush.
I was going to ask you, do you think the country could have a third?
I hope not. I thought his brother was the worst president in my lifetime.
George W.
Yeah.
In a month, Charlie Baker will be sworn in as the next governor. You're no stranger to the ceremony. The theme of today's OTR Pop Quiz
is inauguration. You ready? Okay. For the OTR Pop Quiz? Now, you have to fall back into your memory banks of the time that you were inaugurated.
And I'm aging.
No. You're maturing. In 2006, Governor Romney left the State House. In the so-called transfer of power, he gave Governor-elect Deval Patrick 3 things, symbols of the office. Sound familiar? Do you remember this?
Yes.
Can you name 2 of the 3?
There's a Bible.
That's one.
What were the other 2?
There's a key and a gavel. So you get 50% there. Well, how would the professor at UCLA grade it? That's what I should...
Not well.
Question 2. The Bible that we talked about belonged to the 33rd governor of the Commonwealth, Benjamin Butler. He was also a major in the Union Army during the Civil War. This is a hard one. Can you name the other elected office that Benjamin Butler held? He was governor of the Commonwealth, and he held another elected office, Benjamin Butler.
No idea.
Congressman before he became governor. We'll continue on the record with Governor Michael Dukakis, the man for whom South Station is now named, but never called South Station again. He's the Duke. Stay with it.